And for God knows how many times now, my character name has been attacked and tainted, with sexual slander spread by the usual thugs, gossips and cowards. And because so many people acted on slander that was ultimately spread by my ex and caused people to jump feet first into this plan, this cannot now be investigated. I have for 8 years been expected to follow due process and follow protocol while no one else has to abide by the same rules. I am now going to have my say and point out a few things that should have been looked into. I'm not asking anyone to stop spreading slander about me. I'm not requesting any kind of sympathy. I am simply telling it like it is. I am exercising my right to freedom of speech, and more importantly, I am putting out there the evidence and what my complaints hold and showing that they are founded. And hopefully the transparency will oversee and that the correct protocol is followed. Judging by the culture and system in Waterford, it causes great concern and worry. Is this what Ireland has to look forward to with Sinn Féin? A system of cover-ups, collusions, cronyism, intimidation, gaslighting anyone who stands up against them. If David Cunnan and his cohorts is an example of what Sinn Féin has to offer Irish politics, we as a country have some serious concerns ahead. I don't know if Sinn Féin as a political organisation condones Mr Cunnan and his cronies' behaviour. I have no other interaction with Sinn Féin. As you know, I wrote to Mary Lou MacDonald simply pointing out I had issues regarding a handful of people within her party abusing their position. I also outlined a few other issues which she told me I should contact the guards. I can't find fault in this. It suits the members within the party I am complaining of to make it look like I have an issue with the party. This is untrue. It's 100% strictly with Mr Cunnan and his cronies close to him. I will also add here, not all associates to him act the same way as these handful of people, mainly the ones up around Barrack Street. But the sense of glorified self-entitlement of Mr Cunnan I find is beyond words. In my opinion, he's the perfect example of what Irish politics are trying to get away from, and I assume Sinn Féin were also trying to follow. But the sense of glorified self-entitlement of Mr Cunnan I find is beyond words. In my opinion, he is a perfect example of what Irish politics are trying to get away from, and I assume Sinn Féin were as well. I heard his comments on transparency when dealing with corruption. I read his comments on cronyism and on favouritism when he's attacking another party. In this ongoing saga, I am the only one to ever call for an investigation. Even approaching Mr Cunnan, as everyone will be aware, as I implicated certain people yards from his office in Barrack Street, he had no interest in transparency, implementing favouritism and cronyism. This is the part I don't agree with. The same day he fobbed me off later that night, sending my wife a friend request, trying to provoke me. Not to be running over same ground constantly, I informed his party also, and I informed it all. I'd imagine this didn't go down too well. I have no choice now to speak about a situation I would have preferred to keep quiet and dealt with accordingly, but I haven't been afforded the same rights. I've been labelled guilty and a narrative now has been built around me, and those involved are desperate that this does not come out. So I have no choice but to speak publicly about this. I won't be intimidating into not telling the truth because it threatens other people's careers. We have a certain Garda after corrupting his career to facilitate this witch hunt, because someone felt putting their ego before the workings of the system was more important, and not for the first time. We have a Garda now, along with Waterford City Council, who I'll add are up to their neck in this corrupt mess, and unfortunately cronies of Mr Cunnan after dealing with these local criminals who we already know has caused chaos in Waterford. And now you have a Garda, members of Sinn Féin, now apparently owe this crowd a favour. Assuming I was in fear after I was beaten up, it was arranged by Mr Cunnan's cronies to have these clowns try and intimidate me by passive-aggressively hanging around my in-laws. A certain Garda retrieved the summons this crowd had up with my name on it. Despite it being out of date, the Garda somehow managed to be able to retrieve it and knew who had it and who had signed for it and serve it on me. It was a veiled attempt to show me they were both sharing information. I was to feel threatened and leave. Instead I made it public and I got louder. The judge in court could only get from the Garda that it was registered posted. He didn't know how they had it, how the Garda knew who to get it from. Days after I was assaulted, I reported this detective that in my opinion set this up. The judge threw out the summons out of court. The fact you have a Garda trading information both ways with criminals is a serious issue. The same criminals reported for an assault, the same criminals multiple statements about incidents with them harassing and intimidating my family. The same criminals previously investigated by CAB and still receive subsidisation and employment by Waterford City Council. None of these, not one investigated, despite mountains of evidence. The same detective I had made a complaint about to the superintendent. I had also made 4 other complaints about issues with this detective. I have a letter from the superintendent where it was passed to GSOC, and he tries to get me to make a statement on the 13th of the 3rd, 2022, which is basically 2 weeks ago. Given my complaints, he would be the last person to have any interaction with me. If I was to meet for a statement, it would only benefit him later to GSOC when my previous complaint was dealt with. How could I make a statement to a detective I already have a complaint in over? Was he sent to ring me as he said, or did he do this off his own back? The issue of Waterford City Council subsidising a group CAB had investigated. This is a local TD's place to be bringing up and questioning. I only bring it up if I'm honest because they've been harassing myself and my family on behalf of Mr. Conan's cronies, and the detective who thought it would be a good idea to deal with them has basically created a fucking situation that the guards can't investigate because they'll turn around and say who put them up to. The issue of Waterford Council subsidising a group CAB had investigated. This is a local TD's or a councillor's place to be bringing up and questioning. I only bring it up if I'm honest, as they have been harassing my family and myself on behalf of Mr. Conan's cronies and the detective who thought this would be a good idea to deal with these people. I doubt this will go on anywhere else in Ireland, so why is it acceptable in Waterford? Certain people think they have the entitlement to intervene and influence the due process in place by the state regarding complaints, given reasons to believe they deem themselves above the system. Because I stood my ground and refused to bow down to the systematic bullying which these people consider normal to keep quiet, this action in itself is an issue. I've had my character destroyed. I've had personal issues I won't go into targeted by these so-called professionals desperate to provoke me so that their actions remain hidden. This has gotten so bad the only real way of dealing with it is by not dealing with it at all. I understand I am one person against a system full of people desperate to keep something hidden. They have jobs, pensions, reputations, whereas I'm looked as I'm disposable. I may only be one person, but in 8 years they could not get what they wanted, which was to provoke me into doing something to get rid of me. So they're now going to create a narrative and just cause that condones their actions and therefore letting these people off the hook. Because I speak the truth, I am apparently at risk. 2022 that someone can be at risk for wanting to tell the truth is a farce. The reason I mention Mr. Conan quite a bit is because my issue is with him and his cronies, glorified thugs who abuse the Sinn Féin name and they blur the lines when it suits them. Everyone tiptoes around them. We all know who I'm talking of in Waterford. They have no interest in history or politics and only interest in the usage of fear. And as many people know, I could really go into depth and really open a can of worms here if I wanted to. The working class people of Waterford know I am talking the truth. Why hasn't a politician the balls to question some of the stuff I brought up? If Sinn Féin is to remain a serious political group, which it clearly is, this blurring of the lines and people abusing their power and its network needs addressing. This is not my place to be saying this. This again is a council or a TD's place. But the culture in Waterford of tiptoeing around certain topics is very much alive. As I said before, I am only talking of personal experience. I can only hope this doesn't go on elsewhere. The hypocrisy in Waterford that runs concurrent with the element of you can't say that because someone is part of the Sinn Féin. No one is above the law or above being called out if they're wrong. We again have the cohorts of Mr. Conan from Barrack Street engaging with a certain group, the same group I've proved to be swapping data with the Garda as I previously spoke about. The usual sexual slander spread throughout various pubs, sporting clubs, tattooists, council estates. Strange you can spread this so easily, but you do everything in your power to prevent it being investigated. The corruption and collusion in Waterford, it is so bad it's like flogging a dead horse trying to report anything. Hopefully the Garda Ombudsman won't be influenced and the Legal Services Regulatory Association will see what's in black and white and act accordingly. But if needs must, I'll take this as far as I can, which will likely be the courts. There is enough evidence that speaks for itself. I will upload all my complaints in neat order just to show my faults and my complaints are founded and have evidence. I'll document how far this corruption goes. Will I need to bring it to the court? I don't know. I am in a waiting position at the moment, so I can't say GSOC or LSRA have acted right or acted wrong. Everyone assumes this began in 2016 when this sexual slander was done. I will explain now how it began in 2013-14, and I will explain now who created this and why. I know this is going to sound unbelievable, but it's true, and people will see the importance of why my character had to be destroyed. This was something I tried to have investigated privately, but here we are. Mr. Conlan, you should pay attention to this and might encourage you to check how deep the puddle goes. This woman, his wife, the psychologist, actively and quite aggressively pursued myself, my ex, and the kids. I confided information to the tutor, not realizing he was passing the information back to his wife. I intend on making a video and I will speak out about the practices of this religion. My ex, myself and the kids were in this religion. I had concerns about my ex threatening to take the kids back to Dublin every time we argued, so this was always a kind of threat to me, considering I was at the kind of rearing both the kids, being honest with you, at this stage. This is where things really changed. This woman, a psychologist employed by Tulsa Waterford, was involved in a case years prior regarding someone close to me. So ethically, she should have been nowhere near my family. She was aware of this and she kept it hidden. And this is where it gets crazy. An allegation of sexual misconduct was made against a child of a Tulsa employee. Some things I can't go into for obvious reasons. I was asked to sit in as a witness in an interview which happened out in Arkina Hospital in Waterford. During the questioning, and I'll add here, it was nothing to do with me, I was simply a witness. There was a social worker there named James Kennedy of Waterford, a person I can't name, and a female. I assumed the female was a Garda, given the seriousness and the nature of the situation. I heard how the allegations were 6 to 7 weeks old. I questioned why you were only trying to find out what happened now weeks later. I was informed there was a shortage of staff. There was an incident prior that would have made this place red flagged. Social worker James Kennedy knows of this issue, and it was him that was part of a 2-person team that dealt with this. The following day I inquired what was the next step with the guard. I was informed that this person wasn't a guard but a psychologist from Tulsa. I was obviously pissed. You had Tulsa investigating the actions of a child of an employee of Tulsa, and it was left 6 to 7 weeks later. So it could only ever work out this way. The correct protocol here was to contact the guards and arrange emergency accommodation until staff was found as soon as possible. The psychologist, as I heard the next day, decided it would be kept internal, and she decided to keep the guard out. The girl who reported it was deemed troublesome and she was moved on. The same psychologist that took it upon herself not to follow protocol was the same person that recruited my ex, myself and the kids. This is the same psychologist that is behind all of this. I found this out at my father's funeral in 2015, which unbelievably she had the cheek to attend, despite me leaving this religion and having a serious dislike for these people. When it became clear, as it dawned on me after seeing her speaking with someone, and it caused me to wonder why they were so friendly, I realised who this person was, and the shit really hit the fan. This was in early 2015. As you can imagine, the major breach in code of conduct, the gross conflict of interest, the breach of ethics is enormous here and would be grounds for her to lose her licence. Not to mention a huge question mark over every case she was ever a part of. Not to mention, as I had started to warn people of what her plan was for her and her husband to ingrain this religion into the infrastructure of Irish society. That's how egotistical this woman is. The conflict of interest of her husband inviting students from his classroom to his house is enough for him to be struck off. So as you can imagine, this is a serious major issue. This is all fact and can all be checked. And my real issue with Mr. Conlan is I told Mr. Conlan in 2016 about this, and I offered to elaborate, and he chose to believe the sexual slander members of his own party had spread around. I offered to elaborate. He chose to believe the sexual slander members of his party had spread around. His only action to not assist any investigation but to send my wife a friend request later that night. He could have just heard me out. Instead, cronyism played its part and I was ignored. I'm sure this psychologist kept this information quiet when destroying my character. I cannot emphasise how poisonous this woman is, and she's left to push this religion into Ireland. I'm sure this psychologist kept this information quiet when she was destroying my character. I cannot emphasize how poisonous this woman is, and she's left to push this religion into Ireland, helping people out who corrupted my case when she was originally the person that roped them into this. She's simply now putting bodies between me and her in an effort to hide her own actions. Look what's been done. Look at the collateral damage because of this woman. If I committed a crime, do you really think that the Garda gave me some kind of pass? Look at the drama it would have saved if I did do something and they could just arrest me and have me sent to jail. I'm sure this psychologist kept this information quiet when she was destroying my character. I cannot emphasize how poisonous this woman is, and she's left to push this religion into Ireland, helping people out who corrupted my case when she was originally the person that roped them into this. So the next time people want to put the cart before the horse rather than the old Irish way of I'll scratch your back and you scratch mine, or one hand washes the other, they should maybe ask why. This was all set up from there. I trusted Tusla enough to give them my passwords. I uploaded Tusla's answer to me trying to get my passwords back. These were needed to do what was done, showing this was all premeditated. They were passed back to the psychologist and from there to my ex, and as we know, the rest is history. There is a more in-depth explanation on my site, johnhealyhavinavoice.com. I explained this to my solicitor, who didn't believe me. Halfway through my case was the first time this sexual slander was done. I was talking non-stop about this religion in court. I was explaining the tactics they were using. I was deemed as being mad. Believing the sexual slander, my solicitor, in my opinion, mishandled my case. I will update the actions of the LSRA who are investigating her involvement with my case. It became a worry when it was realised people had put the cart before the horse and certain people were looking at their reputation ruined and the loss of their job. So someone in power was turned to try influence me into not making my complaints. This person approached two Garda, and from what I know, playing some kind of like Mr. Fix or kind of John Gotti role. The two Garda then approached local thugs, and instead of making me leave, I got louder. Now they've spun this in such a way to condone their actions, promoting some kind of just cause. It's an insult to anyone's intelligence. My allegations has remained unchanged in 8 years, while various efforts to imply I was aggressive, a fantasist, a pervert, not to mention various forms of harassment to try and get a reaction out of me. I hope LSRA and GSOC do their job and don't, like so many before, buckle under the influence. We all know potentially what will likely happen, and I hope I'm wrong. Will the whole Irish system now be corrupted? A narrative put together after they already destroyed my character for whatever reason. I've always been very public about calling for this to be investigated. You will hear about the harassment of a group of travellers who, according to himself, he owns the town. This speaks more about the TDs and the Garda than anyone else. But you can see the seriousness of what I've said and the seriousness to what they've said. So why no investigation? Is it to protect me? I'm sure the illusion of something being done or investigated will be played out, but the risk of the domino effect will hamper this. Push the wrong people and they will simply turn around and say they were acting on behalf of this person or on that person. So I can't read. So it's been set up, I'd imagine, to be covered up the whole lot. I am prepared to go through the courts if I must. The local criminals, who a politician, Garda and members of Waterford Council had to go to, will believe they were behind this campaign to make me stop. Anyone with any intelligence will see this for what it is. It's the people in power who had to resort to these people should be held accountable. Criminals are simply opportunistic, and the opportunity was presented and they took it. The real issue is who engaged with them. This social shunning won't stop me. I'm just waiting on the due process that I have to follow before I can take it further, which I will. What fate has anyone in a system designed to protect the corrupt? It's in black and white and cannot be disproven, and you don't need to believe me anymore, as a number of these people have gloated about what they have done and on behalf of who, essentially proving what I've said. Look at the people who spread this stuff and who realistically it's done for. If corrupting a whole system to cover this up is a victory, so be it. It's a stain on democracy in reality, and an insult to the genuine people in the system who don't engage in cronyism and corruption that's rampant in Waterford. I always knew I wouldn't win this, as I've always repeatedly said. It's not about winning, it's about standing my ground. I intend to see how far before accountability is implemented. I'd like to think it's a Waterford thing, but after hearing a few weeks ago how the media were approached in order to stop making any kind of attention, what does this tell you? What are the people worried I might draw attention to? I was offered recently to sit down with someone to try and resolve this. A sad attempt at him being left out of this mess. I said no. And if what I say about this woman is true, it should be investigated. I was told by the psychology department in Tussle she would have a second person sitting in all her meetings as I had brought up her actions years earlier. Is this still in force? The drive of this Bahoy to be pushed through the Irish system is very much true, as I know from experience. I predicted so much over the years I couldn't have been making this up. How could I predict something so strange and obscure? That HSE starts to push 18 months after I brought it up, and now it's being pushed on the back of me. There is a large volume of evidence, and all the intimidation, bullying, sexual slander, gaslighting, and hide behind various corrupt professionals won't and can make all this disappear. As I've said, I have to wait on GSOC and LSRA to make their findings before I move to the next step. One last word to Joe Daniels and Waterford City Council, who covered the back of Leo Kennedy and Roisin Doherty, two workers in Waterford City Council. You know firsthand of what both these employees engaged in. Why wasn't this acted upon? Your reference to get me wife and myself to sign over a house up in Barrack Street, which turned out to be not even worth the paper that it was wrote on. I'd like an explanation on what that reference was about, because it was totally false and totally fake. I'd like an explanation on why you covered up what you covered up was what happened out at my mother's house, and we both know what I'm on about, and I can give you emails if you want to support what I'm saying, if you want me to jog your memory. Why a person was put living beside my mother after it was Waterford City Council who originally separated him and me. This person, along with another Waterford City Council worker, harassed my mother. This was all arranged and condoned by Waterford Council to hide a certain issue I just mentioned with Mr. Joe Daniels knows of. This person was purposely put beside her to do what he went on to do, ignoring all duty of care Waterford City Council are obliged to take into account. Where's the accountability for what was implemented against a woman living on her own? People can say whatever about me. My mother never argued with anyone and for some reason became a target. I would upload the emails, but I'm currently waiting on my file from the Waterford City Council, and I want to see what to leave out and what to leave in. We made a complaint about what went on up in Barrack Street. You have myself and my wife down that we voluntarily gave a house back, that we voluntarily left our clothes up there, we voluntarily left our furniture up there, we voluntarily continued paying the rent for 13 months up there, and we voluntarily made ourselves homeless. This is an insult to anyone's intelligence. These people, as I said previously, have no interest in history or in politics, and have only interest in looking to be part of a threatening group. I'm not saying Sinn Féin condones this, but I'll say it like it is. You have one set of rules for some people and another for the rest. I want to emphasise and I want to reiterate again how I am not attacking Sinn Féin, as I know full well certain people will again try and make it look like I'm attacking the group to create a smokescreen around their own actions. For Waterford City Council to try and push that we chose to make ourselves homeless, leave all our furniture, all our clothes and continue paying the rent, this is an insult. There was supposed to be an investigation which you all hid, and the emails will show. And one last thing, I see Henry Halligan is still out in Ballybeg Church. Despite the Bishop writing and apologising for various actions, it took 9 emails to get a response from the Bishop. I only got a response because I said I was going to upload all 9 emails if I didn't get a reply. Unfortunately, influence and who you know came into practice, and the Bishop covered for him. He cuts the back off the priest, he prints off private emails and passes them back to a certain politician who I was talking about. He then unbelievably tries to intervene in my mother's funeral arrangements so his actions remain hidden. And the Bishop, after first apologising for my experiences, then does not hold him accountable for this. People, especially in Ballybeg, deserve to know how much of a deceitful hypocrite Mr. Henry Halligan is working out in that church. The Catholic Church, yet again, siding with influence rather than doing what's right. There's no surprise there really. And one last word to Mr. Conlan. You have already brought so much negativity to Sinn Féin's name. I'm sure it will be easier to put the blame on me. Just repeat for all to hear, I have no issue with Sinn Féin as a group. If the corrupt people I have issues with are Garda, County Councillor, a solicitor, are members of Sinn Féin, I will call them out, which is my right to do so. The only reason I don't mention any other political party is because I don't have an issue with any of them. I don't speak out about any other members of Sinn Féin because I don't have any other issues with any other members of Sinn Féin. And it's just like your group close to you and you is what I have an issue with. So stop hiding within the group trying to make it look like I'm attacking the group. If any TD, including Mr. Connan, wants to aid an investigation into this, I would only welcome it. I won't be tiptoeing around the bullshit of this glorified cover-up though. I started making videos and I'll explain what each document is and why it's so important, so we all know my complaints has grounds and that it's founded. And if nothing else, it will show the inner workings of the complaint procedures in Ireland made against the upper class and how they are dealt with. I couldn't be provoked, I couldn't be made give up, and the last and only resort now is to create a narrative around a story that was spread prior to my character assassination that will condone the corruption of these people. These people need removing. The fact the whole system now has to suffer because of these clowns, that in itself is a reason for change. I will point out some issues now that can be verified by simply retrieving the paperwork. You'll have to excuse the way this was edited and the way it's badly wrote.